Good morning, Professor. Or good afternoon, I should say. You're muted.
Good afternoon. How are you, Ruwan?
How are you? I'm well. I would like to say I'm speaking to you from a sunny Scotland, but it's not. It's raining and it's grey and it's cold. And it's August.
And it was raining very heavily here. It was raining very heavily here. Suddenly it has become as sunny as your Scotland, even more than that.
Well, you bring some sun to Scotland.
Yes. Ruwan, for your information, I just started, introducing my students, especially for criminal honors class, introduction about the British police. Just
Yes.
Today only we have introduced them. And with your session, I believe that they will be knowing more about what's the role and responsibilities of the British police.
Will do. Yes, I will cover that bit, plus
Yes.
more.
And with your permission, Ruwan, I would like to take some screenshots and also capture some photographs while you're presenting, and with the permission of all the other participants, because I know that if I take it from India, my students will not say anything, even my colleagues will not say anything, but you might say because of your EU GDPR.
I have no issue at all.
Yes. I think we can start, Pragya.
Yeah, sure, ma'am.
We start.
So, good afternoon, everyone. Now, I would like to welcome you all on the behalf of Center for Child and Women Rights for the webinar of the topic Role of Police in the Criminal Justice System with special reference to protection in UK, which will be presented by Mr. Ruwan Uduwerage-Pererawaas. Pardon me if I pronounce it wrong. So before we started, I would like to inform the participants that if you have any questions, kindly drop them into the chat box. The questions will be answered later on the Q&A session. So I would also like to thank you, ma'am, and thank and invite Dr. Professor Debarati Halder, who is the research head for the center, and for giving us this opportunity. Ma'am, I would like to request you to kindly introduce Mr. Ruwan sir to us. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Pragya. And thank you for accepting my invitation. Now, it's my duty to introduce you to all the participants. And since we are going live, so it will be beneficial for our students and also our participants to know about your background also, as they can connect with you later onwards. Ruwan Uduwerage-Pererawaas, I'm sorry again, Ruwan, is a former British police officer of Sri Lankan descent, a founding member, and the first General Secretary to the National Black Police Association, a former national and international police trainer and advisor and campaigner in the field of equality and diversity and community engagement issues. Although now Ruwan has retired from the police services, Ruwan is engaged as criminal justice academic now. He's still actively involved in all aspects of developing equality and diversity and greater community engagement within both the voluntary and public sectors at regional, national, and international level. So I welcome you, Ruwan, for holding this very important session on the role of police in the criminal justice system in the UK on special reference with women's safety. Over to you, Ruwan.
Well, thank you very much, Professor. It's an absolute honour to be here today. I have to say, well, I'm sure the reception will be exceptionally warm, but obviously doing Zoom conferences, I do miss out on the hospitality, i.e. the meals. And I do thoroughly enjoy the lunches. So the only lunch, my wife has said she's happy to bring my lunch in to me. I said, it's not quite the same. So anyway, so I will swiftly move on. As you said, my name is Ruwan Uduwerage-Pererawaas. I can assure you Uduwerage is difficult even in Sri Lanka for people to say. So don't worry about that. I come from my family are one of those old Sri Lankan families. It has dabbled in politics and been on the wrong side every time. So very traditional. And although I'm a criminal justice professional, I'm also involved in politics and carrying on the long tradition of being pretty awful at it as well. So I am still involved in equality, human rights issues, both here in the UK and elsewhere. I'm currently doing some work in Sri Lanka as well. And I work with a number of universities, as well as overseas, specifically in Gujarat Raksha Shakti University, where I'm a visiting academic there. So today I'm going to look at policing, but it's going to be a bit of a horse race dash through this topic. So what I'm going to ask is that I'm more than happy to come back and do some more sessions to go into greater depth. But today I'm going to be looking at policing specifically, as the Professor has said, from a perspective of female protection and female involvement within policing, as well as the wider criminal justice system. And so I'm going to also look at aspects of the prison system. And the reason being is because obviously looking at the gender agenda in isolation is wrong. We need to, one organization can be professing to do one thing when in wider society is the real story. And I would suggest that's where we also need to look specifically with regard to protection of women in the UK and elsewhere, actually.
Your wife is over.
Someone just come in. Right, so let me move on swiftly. So give you a perspective, but ground things first. The United Kingdom, well, first things first. It is the oath of office of a police officer. This is to, basically, I'll put this up here because this is the oath of office that I took and all police officers take.
Shut the fuck up, bitch.
Hello, someone speaking? Nope, they've gone. It starts off, here we go. I do solemnly and sincerely declare and affirm that
Your English sucks, bitch.
The Queen in the office of Constable. For first things first. Here in the UK, we swear allegiance to the Queen as head of the state rather than a president. There are questions you can legitimately ask literally on that topic alone, and that's probably worth an entire module in law. So we swear allegiance to the Queen in the office of Constable. With fairness, integrity, diligence, and impartiality, upholding fundamental human rights and according equal respect to all people. And that I will, to the best of my power, cause the peace to be kept and preserved and prevent all offences against people and property. And that while I continue to hold the said office, I will, to the best of my skill and knowledge, discharge all my duties thereof faithfully according to the law. As lawyers, you could pull that apart and start challenging me on every aspect of it, and I would happily, willingly take questions regarding that, and perhaps in the future you will. In India, obviously, police officers swear allegiance to the Constitution. Here in the UK, we unfortunately do not have a written codified constitution that I can simply pick up this moment and show you. As lawyers here in the UK, well, constitutional lawyers will say, yes, of course we have a constitution. But actually, it's held within so many different places, the layperson simply has no access to it easily. And therefore, I would suggest that if you cannot see your constitution, then actually, do you have really a constitution? So, let's say in the UK, the Queen is the head of the system. The Queen actually has no authority. It is purely the Queen's government that has the authority. But the police are meant to be independent of the government. So I need you to remember that bit. So this is the United Kingdom. So when the British Police Service was formed in 1829, this was United Kingdom, all the bits of it, everything you see on the screen here. What the United Kingdom is now is this piece here. With regard to policing, the blue area you can see is made up of 43 different. They all have the same power. They can all cross borders, etc. But there are 43 different police services. The grey area to the top is where I am. Well, in fact, I'm at the very, very top. Up here, in fact. That is Scotland. Scotland has one police service. The 9 police services of Scotland were amalgamated a few years ago, so it's now one police service. And the area to the left here, Northern Ireland, has its own individual police service as well. Scotland also has different laws to the rest of England and Wales. So this is England, and this area here is Wales, here on the left-hand side of the blue block. Right. There are 43 different police services in England and Wales alone. So you can imagine the confusion that this can cause. Now, just to ground it in some reference for you, reality, the UK, the whole of this area, is population-wise similar to Gujarat. The police service, though, in the UK, is actually considerably larger than the entire criminal justice system in Gujarat. The police service is around, in England and Wales, around 140,000 people. That's officers, that doesn't include civilian staff. So when you put on top civilian staff, etc., you're looking at over 250,000 people. So same size population as Gujarat, but a police service that's exceptionally bigger. The roots of policing, as you will all be aware of, or would have heard of, goes back to Sir Robert Peel, and in 1829, something's gone wrong here, we go, 1829 in London. Yet, at least a little bit of research shows that actually the first police service in the United Kingdom was established in Scotland in 1779. Now, I'm currently doing some research about the roots of policing, and I would actually put forward the idea or suggestion that perhaps the roots of British policing do not lay on this little island here, but actually lay elsewhere. And when you consider that the East India Company in India or South Asia and the similar in the Caribbean already had police agencies in place, it's not too hard to see that actually the roots of policing may well stem from elsewhere and not from the British Isles. And this could actually, when you saw in the oath of office about protection of life and property, in the UK system, the West, and those that follow the British police model, property has historically been a larger emphasis of interest than people. And that is still true to this day, even though the language always puts people before property. And I would suggest that is one of the hiccups that we have within the system. So the British police, how do you join? Up until recently, basically if you had a pulse and basic education and all your limbs were in the correct place, you could join. Thankfully, the system has changed. We now have 3 entry routes. There's an apprenticeship scheme. So people join as a constable. Everyone joins as a constable. And as it says there, they earn while they learn. They go on a 3-year distance learning degree, a recognised professional police practice degree. And at the end of, if they're successful at the end of that degree, then they not only get their degree, and if they're good at their practice, they then they finish their probation. They are accepted as full police officers. Having said that, throughout their entire teaching practice area, during their learning, they've been doing on-the-job learning, and they've had all the powers of a police officer anyway. The second process is a degree holder in any subject. So they're expected, obviously they have a degree, so they don't need to go away and do a degree. So what they do is actually they do a diploma in a professional police practice, and they still do their probationary period, but it's 2 years as opposed to 3 years. And at the end, if they're successful, they get their diploma and also their full-blown police officer. And the last system, which is becoming very popular, is that people will go to a specific university and they will do a recognized police professional degree. But whilst they are doing that, they become volunteer police officers. We call them special constables. And so their vocational training, or the majority of their vocational training, takes place during their special constable work, and obviously their academic studies on top of that. And at the end of 3 years, they pass out with their degree, as well as they can then apply for any police service in the country. Just because they have that degree doesn't mean they will get a job, but it puts them further up the list. So that's the entry system. I've always been rather impressed with the India Police Service, Sri Lanka Police Service, and elsewhere, where there is direct entry as well. Although I was initially anti, when I attended or started lecturing at the Police Staff College, Browns Hill, I got to meet and go overseas and meet lots of officers and realise the benefits of direct entry. So direct entry is now coming into the British Police Service, but it's still fairly small. So these are the rank structure. I've used the ranks of the Metropolitan Police because you all are aware of the Metropolitan Police. The other 42 forces have a slightly different system, I'll explain. Has to join as a constable unless they come in on some specialist direct entry. In order to become a sergeant, after 2 years probation, they take their sergeant's exam, and they are then, if they're successful, they're eligible for promotion. Promotion does not necessarily happen. They have to be further interviews, etc. Promotion in the police service is not through service, it's through interviews and etc. So sergeant is the next level. Once they're a sergeant, they're eligible to take their inspector's exam. Their inspector's exam, all of these exams are both multi-choice as well as practical exams. Practical exams. So these are they're job-related exams. There are failings in the system. They're not academic at all. Multi-choice is not really a demonstration of someone's knowledge, but that's where the practical element is meant to come in. Unfortunately, the people assessing they don't necessarily have the knowledge base to truly understand the deeper levels they should have. So inspector then goes to chief inspector, it then goes to superintendent. The superintendent will be in charge of a district, but again, nothing compared with what you will see in India, not at all. A chief inspector, say for example where Raksha Shakti is, the chief inspector I was speaking with back in January had I've forgotten every police station. He had dozens and dozens of police stations, a few hundred staff. In the UK, that would be a chief superintendent. So the rank structure goes up to, and then say where it says chief superintendent, where it says commander. In the Metropolitan Police, it's a commander. In any other force, it's called an assistant chief constable, and then deputy chief constable, then chief constable, where in the Met is commander deputy assistant commissioner, and commissioner. So there's one more extra rank within the Metropolitan Police. That is the most strategic level. Interestingly, whilst I was serving, I taught at the Police Staff College. It wasn't until people reached the level of commander, or sorry, chief superintendent, where when they attended the strategic command course, that actually criminology and academic studies were introduced. That was the first level. It was actually a requirement. That has now changed, but up until literally 5 years ago, someone could get to that level without any academic background at all. Very few did, but it was possible. And it was only at the staff college that they then actually were officially taught things such as criminology, criminal justice studies, law, etc. At training school, where the constables go, they're given basic law, but it's quite militaristic, which is quite interesting by virtue of the fact that when the police service was established, the first thing that Robert Peel wanted, that there was no commonality with the military. That was his requirement, no commonality. Hence the ranks are different, although we do keep a sergeant's job. So moving on, accountability. How is the police service accountable? There he is, there's the chief constable. See, there are 42 chief constables and 1 commissioner in England and Wales. They run a police force, which normally equates to a geographical area, well, always relates to a geographical area. We have shires in the UK, and so the forces are often, coterminous with a county. Some counties have amalgamated together, so you end up with 3, 4, 5 counties and 1 police force. But most of the police forces will carry the name of the county they are involved in. So you have the chief constable, who's in charge of the operational aspect of policing in a given geographical area. The chief constable is not directly, but certainly in any other way, is influenced by the Home Secretary. The Home Secretary cannot give an explicit command to a chief constable, but obviously the Home Secretary is the Home Secretary, and as the government minister has huge influence. So a chief officer ignoring the Home Secretary's will, even if that will is incorrect, will find themselves in difficulty. Her Majesty's Inspectorate is another one of the other aspects of accountability. The Inspectorate is, again, independent directly of the county police. It is the body of former chief officers and lay people, often academics, who will inspect the governorship of a constabulary. It will inspect every aspect they are doing, all their operational as well as the backroom stuff as well. They will give guidance. Her Majesty's Inspector at Constabulary will often write national guidance. Chief constables do not have to follow that guidance, but again, if it went to a court of law and they had not adhered to the guidance, they would find themselves in trouble. Separate to that, there is, for complaints and discipline, the Independent Office of Police Conduct. So all police forces will have their own complaints and discipline department, or they call them professional standards in some places. But a member of the public can take a complaint to the Independent Office of Police Conduct if it feels the chief officer or the constabulary is not going to investigate this properly. Interestingly, all firearms incidents where someone dies or there's an injury or death in custody, they automatically will go to the Independent Office of Police Conduct for investigation. So they will supervise the investigation. If someone is a police officer, and I was in this position once upon a time, and wishes to raise an issue, they are not allowed to take it to the Office of Police Conduct. They are barred from that. So actually a police officer who is blowing the whistle actually has very little redress, very little indeed. So an awful lot of things go uncovered. And lastly, the governance, direct governance, is the Police and Crime Commissioner. The Police and Crime Commissioners were introduced a few, up until that we had police authorities, which were 17 people. They could be councillors, lay people, etc. And they would sit and scrutinise the chief constable and the aspects of the police service, so the budgetary aspects, forward planning, those sorts of things. They were not seen as effective as possible, and certainly not as representative of the communities as possible. So the government of the day, it was under Theresa May as Prime Minister, they got rid of that system and introduced an elected position of Police and Crime Commissioner. The Police and Crime Commissioner is one person, they have a deputy. So they've gone, 17 people have gone, one person replaces them. But they have been elected by the public. Now, when it comes to the elections of police crime commissioners, you'd be lucky if 10% of a community vote for the police crime commissioner. So truly how democratic this system is, it's questionable. And certainly they have become politicized, all these, because in the UK, in order to run for an election, the most effective way is to be part of a political party. So politics historically was kept at arm's length from police officers, from policing. Now it is directly there, directly. The police crime commissioner is a politician in most cases. I'm now going to move to the gender aspect. So let me give you a bit of the positive spin first. So it's been 102 years now since women were allowed to become police officers. And this is a very short clip, so it's worth watching.
Years of women in policing. It's a fantastic milestone, a moment to celebrate the achievements of those who've gone before, the contributions so many women have made to keeping our city safe over the last 100 years.
Policing was seen as something that was only for a male. It marked an extraordinary transformation of the role of women in society. It's a role in which women are so valuable and so important. I remember going to like a rape victim, and I was the only female on a group of about 5 officers, and she was just like, I don't want to speak to anybody else, I only want to speak to her, I only want to speak to the female officer.
We have over 7,800 female from all the ranks within the Metropolitan Police. 27% of our police officers are women, but most importantly, we have Cressida as our commissioner, which for me proves that the experiment was an enormous success.
Now, obviously, that puts a very positive spin to the gender agenda within policing. I'm passionate about equality issues within policing. I've been involved in race equality issues within policing for many years and still am, or rather the inequality within policing. The reason I'm passionate about the gender agenda is because, well, basically, my mother is a female, sisters are female, 51% of the population is female. If a society is not willing to give true fairness, equality and justice to 51% of the population, what is it going to do to other actual genuine minority groups? Because 51% is not a minority group. So until, from a personal perspective, and the work I do, it looks at, we need to crack the gender agenda and make gender inequality something of genuine happening, in order that all the other forms of equality can actually follow through as well. It is absolutely, it's most important this is done. And although that's a lovely little shot of the positive aspects of policing, female policing, their inclusion, etc., the truth may not be quite as positive as that image gave. So, when did policewomen arrive in the police? 1918 was the, it was first proposed. 1919, they actually came in to the Metropolitan Police with 1 female superintendent, 10 supervisors, 100 constables. Some barriers: women with children, dependent children, were barred from entry, and obviously they had no pension rights. I say obviously. Remember, women had only just been given the vote in the UK. In fact, when we first came in the police, they hadn't been given the vote. The reasons why they were justified, here we go. Primarily to deal with women, children, and working in control rooms, etc. They weren't fully operational. They weren't seen as equivalent to male officers. The whole image of an effective police officer, even to this day, when I speak, and I also speak, obviously, when I'm overseas speaking with police officers, when I describe the characteristics of a police officer, they are predominantly male characteristics that they are describing. Now, I know of very few situations that require these male characteristics, and I was formerly a firearms officer for 10 years. And although I was involved in the most sort of violent aspects of policing, I can assure you there were none of those positions I was ever in a female couldn't and wasn't involved in. We had restrictions in firearms about entry. It was around shooting requirements or physical attributes, etc. But again, they were very male dominated. And actually they were false bars. There is no reason why a police officer needs to run at super levels, considering in a police firearms operation, they're actually very close into the offender or suspect, etc. And so actually the physical aspects aren't the same. And from my experience, it was actually easier to teach females to shoot, and they were better shots than men, which really upset lots of the men. So there is no reason why women cannot enter any aspect of policing, but still to this day, there are bars to many, and I can give lots of examples. The reason things change are because of these acts in the 70s. Started off Sex Discrimination Act, Race Equality Act, and the follow ones and others you can see there. That meant that equality had to happen within the police service. Now, when I say had to happen, I can assure you, even to this very day, there is resistance within certain departments for women to actually be there. Even though we have a female commissioner of the Metropolitan Police, there is still the resistance. So, Equal Pay Act, last one. So, 30%, just over 30% of the police service is now female. That's changed from 15 years ago, it's 25%. It's now 15 years later, just over 30%. Now, compared with India, where it's actually beneath 8%, people will say, gosh, you know, this is fantastic. And females are, as you will see, chief officers just beneath 30%. They are fairly evenly spread through the system. The majority, yes, are at police constable level, but still it's only just over 30%, but so it's fairly consistent through. In the Indian Police Service, women are, 90% of women are actually at constable level. This is the head of gender equality for the National Police Chiefs Council, and her words I found quite interesting. Here we go. I am confident that women joining policing now find a more diverse and inclusive environment than she did, and that women join in 10 years' time will find it better still, with even more women at every level. Well, I very much hope that is true, to make sure this is a reality. But the reality is that to this very day, I'm actually currently speaking with a police service, one of the police forces, over some of their female staff who are currently being victimised. When I was General Secretary of National Black Police Association, I disproportionately was an advocate for female officers who were being victimised. And the victimisation generally started out as sexual harassment, and because they were of a ethnically diverse background, it then led on to racism. But actually, it started out from sexual harassment. So the words of Dee Collins, I very much hope and support they become the reality, but I don't believe that reality exists as she implies to this day. Only days ago, Rachel Swan, Chief Constable Derbyshire, was made Chief Constable of Derbyshire. Rachel Swan is got 32 years in the service. She's well respected, etc. Yet I only yesterday went on to a police website that only has police officers on it, and these are some of the comments that they said about Rachel Swan. So didn't she pilot Thunderbirds? Thunderbirds, actually, you won't know, it was a puppet show back in the 70s, and the characteristic was their heads were bigger than the rest of their bodies, etc. The reason she has the hair is because she's very small. There we go. Hope she's going to be taller. A character from The Symptoms. I'm assuming they are referring to the wife of the main character. Some more derogatory comments. So you see, suited to a 10-year-old. And these were all comments on a police website. A police website that only police officers and former police officers have access to. And they were quite happy to put their names, obviously I haven't put their names on there, they were happy to put their names to their bigotry. So the former Chief Constable, Dee Collins, said about this wonderful era we're now in. The Cressida Dick, the Commissioner, in the video clip I showed you, gave the impression that we were in a different era, but actually this is where we are. Now, the reason I'm paying emphasis on this is because if police officers do not see gender equality as a necessity, as something that's just plain right, fair, equal and just, then how are they going to treat female members of the public? And how are they going to deal with such things as domestic violence and things like that? Out of interest, which you'll all be aware of, no doubt, as a result of COVID-19, the pandemic, the response to domestic violence has gone through the floor. Women are being left, it's now known, they're being left in hostile, dangerous environments. So domestic violence has actually gone up. Domestic abuse of children has gone up for the same reasons. At the same time, the government and police services has withdrawn their services for women's refuges and things like that. So in this pandemic, time of crisis, when more services should have gone into supporting our sisters, actually they've been taken away. So violence against women has gone up and is going up. I'm now going to look at the prison service, because the prison service, although not directly connected with the police service, they are separate. Unlike other countries, it's not the same. The police don't run both, and they do come under the same ministry, Ministry of Justice, but they are very, very separate. The prison system in the UK is fast becoming privatised. So it historically has always had problems of inequality, but actually those are getting worse. Now, again, remember UK, the whole of UK is similar in size, population, not geographically, but population to that of Gujarat. Gujarat's about 1.5 times physically bigger. Here in the UK, or sorry, England and Wales, so as of last Friday, there were 79,447 people incarcerated in prisons in the UK. That figure has actually dropped by about 6,000 as a result of early releases relating to COVID-19. So that's an outstanding figure. I mean, that is considerably more than is comparable in India. We have a very high prison population. India has a lower prison population per capita than we do. Of that, 3,262 women make up that figure. So obviously, yeah, the vast percentage are men. Far smaller percentage are women. And it is actually about the same ratio in Gujarat, India, as it is here, women to male prisoners. In this time of equality, and I was going to show some clips around this, but people have said, well, you know, if there's true equality, then why aren't there more women going to prison? Well, frankly, women don't commit the same offences. And also, we've already got too many, we're sending too many people to prison anyway. So it's a ridiculous statement to say that equality means that more women need to go to prison. Actually, fewer people need to be going to prison. There are many, I will show later, some of the reasons why women are in prison, which are totally different from that of men. The prison system was designed for men, and women are expected to put up with it. So there are huge mental health issues. Obviously, the majority, well, not obviously, but the majority of women who go to prison are mothers. So they're leaving their children, or a large percentage, sorry, are mothers, and they're leaving their children. An awful lot of females going to prison actually have gone to prison committing a crime for their male partner. So there's different aspects of why women go to prison and men don't, or why men go to prison. So here we go. Between 2000, so last decade, sorry, between the beginning of the decade and 10 years, it increased by 26%, the female prison population. Interestingly, the same is true in India. That same period, we actually saw a reduction in actual crime, reported crime, across the world. So why more people were going to prison is a question that we need to be asking. 26% of women in prison had no previous convictions, compared with that 12%. That figure's now gone up to about 1/3 of women who go to prison have no previous convictions. There's no and it's not a violent crime. So there's no reason, rationale that I can think of, to send someone who could well be a mother, a carer, an influencer of the next generation, sending them to prison, a system that is not about restorative practices, it's not about education, it's about incarceration. There we go. The survey of prisoners found that nearly half of women, compared with 1/5 of men, reported having committed offences to support someone else's drug use. So women are going to prison, as I said earlier, in order, because they are supporting someone else. So women in prison are actually foreign nationals. And there we go. It's estimated that more than 17,240 children were separated from their mothers in 2010 by imprisonment. That figure is now more. It's a greater figure it's now. Interestingly, as more women are going to prison, it's now harder to get some of the data to actually reference. So 9% of these children were cared for by their fathers, but in most cases, there was no father present. The father had long since left. So, health issues, Oxford University, their report, women are 5 times more likely to have mental health issues than men are whilst in prison. Women account for 28% of all incidents of self-harm. 53% of women reported experience emotional, physical, or sexual abuse as a child, compared with a quarter of the men. Over 50% of women in prison having reported having suffered domestic violence, and 33% sexual abuse. Women in prisons are subject to higher rates of discipline procedures than men. Interestingly, women are susceptible to higher rates of disciplinary proceedings in the police service than men. And if on top of that, if the person is not of white Anglo-Saxon background, that percentage goes up even more. So women in prisons and their characteristics, here we go. Committed their offences in order to support a drug use of someone else, there we go, women more. Experienced emotional, physical abuse. Serving in prisons for non-violent crime. Why are we sending 81% of women who are in prison, why have they gone to prison? For non-violent offences. I mean, 71% of men in prison have gone for non-violent offences. Surely, in the 21st century, there's a better way. A restorative approach is a better way. Interestingly, in India, with the open prison system, it is actually challenging some of these concepts. And people such as Kiran Bedi, one of the finest police officers and criminal justice practitioners I can ever reference, this has been core to what she's been doing. So, no previous convictions, going to prison. So a third of women have spent some form of their childhood in care, away from the family, in a structured, uncaring environment. So 25% indicative psychosis, they are just beneath 50% suicide, etc. These are appalling figures. And again, this is fairly well reflected within the Indian prison system as well. One thing I need to introduce at this point is the whole concept of intersectionality. And it's something that answers the questions as to why females are further disadvantaged than men in any society. And it's something I really feel you ought to look at. It's the concept, it was first devised by Professor Kimberly Crenshaw. She's African American, a feminist criminologist, a feminist activist, and she's looking at why women of colour in the criminal justice system have certain disadvantages over and above females, white females, who equally have disadvantages, but female of colour have more in the American and British systems. And here we go. So it's the interconnected nature of social categorizations such as race, class, gender, as they apply to a given individual or group. So the fact that a female of colour, there is the gender aspect, there's going to be discrimination on. There's going to be discrimination on the fact of their race. There could be discrimination on the fact of their socioeconomic background. There will be, not there could be. Their age, etc. All of these together add to further aspects of marginalisation. And through an awareness of intersectionality, we can better acknowledge and ground the differences among us. So in other words, if we can look at people with it, whatever, in the prison system, policing, whomever is suffering from some form of discrimination, if we can look at them and then start breaking down the different aspects, we can actually see why they're suffering. And it won't be just one thing. It simply won't be. Here in the UK, back in 2010, the law changed and they introduced the need to a quality impact assess every public sector policy, procedure and practice. Absolutely nullified. It still exists in law, but the government has now allowed so many exceptions as to why you don't need to do it. But actually, if we did that from looking at it from an intersectionality aspect, which is a feminist criminologist perspective, if we looked at equality, diversity, and all those aspects, all that with these eyes, we would find it far easier to understand what are the causes and barriers to people's progressing in their lives. So I will make sure you have all these slides. So this is one slide it's a really useful slide for you, and it gives many of the aspects where females are disadvantaged in prisons. And again, this is reflected in external society as well. So I will make sure you have this. As the academic I am, here are some of the references, which you are more than happy, please have a look at, go to. You have some cracking sources of references these days. Certainly during COVID, the universities gave out a wealth of different sources where you can get access, but you can always contact me and I'm more than happy to share them. Those are my contact details at the bottom, my Twitter on the right, my email account on the left, and I'm open for questions. Does anyone have any questions? Let's have a look. I'll have a look in the chat. Sorry, I've got to open the chat room. Right, so we've got any questions. So if anyone wants to put any questions in the chat, I'm more than happy to answer them. Or if you are a little bit shy, feel free, you can email me, you can Twitter me. As I've said to the professor, more than happy, because this is a very swift session, I'm more than happy to go into greater depth around policing and its position within British society, and anything else to do with criminal justice, as that is my area of expertise. Here we go. I have a question as to how would a procedure go after any complaints recorded by any police officer? Ah, right, yes. Right, if a police officer makes a complaint about the police service, they have to do it in a strange sort of way. It comes under the human resources department processes rather than anything else. If it's of a criminal nature, then yes, they can make a direct complaint to their supervisor, whomever. But if it's more of a civil nature and it's internal, it goes through the human resources system. It's called a grievance procedure. The grievance procedure is a very, very bogged down system. There are more grievances about the grievance procedure than I care to think about. It's a failed system. So no, unfortunately, a police officer making complaints has great difficulty. Okay.
So there is a question from Nila.
Yeah.
Don't you think privatization of prisons led to security lapse situation?
Do I think? I have to say yes. Now, I'm not saying the previous system was as effective as it should have been, because it wasn't. But certainly since the privatisation of police or prisons, not all prisons are, but lots are, what we've seen is a reduction of contact between prisoners and prison officers. So prisoners are now placed in their cell, often for 23 hours a day with 1 hour for exercise. So you can imagine the frustration that's built up. There's fewer prison officers to work with them, so the tensions rise, and that's simply down to costs. Simple as that. I do not, though, say that previously prison officers were as well trained as they should be, because they should have been far better trained than they were.
Now, the next question is from Mahalakshmi Tiwari. I wanted to know if the investigation wing and the law and order wing are separate or intertwined.
In the police. So there is the uniformed operational, and there is what we know as the Criminal Investigation Department, CID, who deal with more serious crime. Now, I have been both a member of the operational, so no, there's no barrier between them. People move from one into the other, and often they are promoted from one to the other. Now, again, the investigation wing, historically, the investigation wing has not been trained to a level that they should have been. So they didn't understand the causes of crime. But having said that, police officers, as I said earlier, it wasn't until someone had been in the police service maybe 20 years and they were a senior police officer that they were taught what criminal justice was, or criminology was. So what we're now seeing is that people are expected to come into the police service with that core knowledge. I lecture on things such as the principles of policing, which have been around since 1829. And if I asked most police officers, well, what are the principles of policing, the 9 principles that you claim you work to, they would not be able to tell me. If I asked them what the causes of crime were, they would not be able to tell me. So the whole education of police officers needs to move up. What we need is criminologists, practical criminologists. What I'm desperate for, and this is why I love working with lawyers, is that I want lawyers to understand criminology, to understand the causes of crime, etc., because that will make them more effective in defending or prosecuting their cases. So if the whole criminal justice system understood what criminology was and is, then actually the whole system would rise. Any other questions?
Any other questions, sir? I guess we have covered all the questions then.
Okay, I say I'm more than happy. If you want to send me some more questions, I will happily answer them. Yeah, happily to do that. Oh, here we go. I have a question as to, in India, any crime is against the state, but there is a price. Sorry, I'm misreading. What is the process? Sorry, I have a question. What is the process? Yeah, in the UK, all crimes are committed, rather than against the state, crimes are committed against the Queen as the head of state. Now, as crimes can only be committed against the Queen, it actually means that technically the Queen can't commit a crime, because the Queen is above the law, because it's her law. So technically, in the UK, the Queen could kill people, could do all sorts of crimes and never be convicted, technically. Obviously, there wouldn't be a monarchy very long afterwards, but technically. So yes, in the UK, all crimes are against the Queen. So we, in a court of law, it would say the offender's name, v. Regina, i.e. the monarch. The investigation codes, code for investigation procedures. Now the Police Staff College, Bramshill, or as it's now called, College of Policing, they actually produce the guidance for all investigations. Now, for example, I was involved in developing the murder manual. So serious crime is broken down, and then there's guidance for specific crime. Yes, there is a basic code of investigation that all police officers should be aware of, but when it comes to more serious crime, then there is guidance for each. So trafficking, human trafficking has its own guidance. Domestic violence has its own guidance. The reason for that is because, say for example, domestic violence, we need to get the officers to be far more aware of the causes, the unheard causes of the violence, etc. So they need to look far more at the psychology, etc. So we have to have different pieces of guidance on procedures. So kindly highlight the important code. No, sorry, done that. Is there any witness protection? We do have a witness protection scheme. It's often, most police officers only hear about it when it comes to some domestic violence situations. Actually, the scheme is actually used to hide people. I've been involved in using the system, and it comes from the witness protection system, when it's been involved. These have been young couples from mixed Asian backgrounds, and basically forced marriage situations or threat of forced marriage, and we've had to hide the person. So if any police investigation, then can the Queen take over? No. Yes, the Queen is the head of state, and I swore allegiance to the Queen, and in effect I was a constable to the Queen. But the Queen, no, can't actually get directly involved in anything. The Queen's not allowed to get involved as a constitutional monarch. That's simply not acceptable. And that happened, that change happened with the chopping the head off of Charles I 300 years ago, when the monarchy got rid of and the republic was put in place. So it changed slightly there. Having said that, the royal family, the Queen, has huge influence. Is there anything else?
Any more questions? So there's a question, what if she asks any department to interfere with her orders?
Well, at this very moment in time, there's lots of conspiracy theories about Prince Andrew and Epstein in America and child abuse, etc. I'm not saying the Queen, any influence she has is not constitutionally being used if she was to do that. So if she was trying to get Andrew out of trouble, etc., or not have allowed the American authorities to interview him, that actually would be unconstitutional. Now, we wouldn't be able to do anything to the Queen because she's the head of state. But Prince Andrew himself is the same as myself in his rights in the UK. So he has fewer, he wouldn't be afforded that same opportunity of being able to escape. Having said that, I'm not a fool. The Queen is the Queen, and Prince Andrew's her son. So obviously she has greater influence than if I got in trouble. So what if she asked her? How is the
Political involvement in the...
Yeah, unfortunately, to say that the British police has never been influenced by politics would be a foolish thing to say. In fact, in a few years after the Metropolitan Police was established in 1829, the then Home Secretary tried to intervene in policing and encouraged the police. It was at certain riots, and the Home Secretary basically forced the police to intervene in a way that was seen as far too violent. Now, that went to court, and the Home Secretary was found at fault. That was 1830 something. So yes, the political influence has always been there. I would suggest that this historically has been far more, rather than direct party political influence, it's been an informal, corrupt neptitude system where I'm the head of the golf club and the chief constable plays golf there, and I put influence over that way. So it's a corrupt system, way of doing things. But now we have direct party politics getting involved in policing, which, as we've seen in America, where you get elected sheriffs, elected chief police officers, it's not a good system. The police service must maintain independence from the judiciary. It's not from judiciary, from the state, because actually the state require the police to be independent. If you look at those countries where the police are just a mouthpiece of the government, most of us would not want to live in those countries. Are there any police brutality scenarios relevant in you? Yes, we saw obviously in the recent killing in America. Similar things have happened here in the UK. There are a large number of deaths in custody where police officers have been involved. To this day, not one police officer has ever been found guilty for killing someone. They have been found guilty for excess violence, but not for killing someone. Clearly that has happened. So brutality is an aspect of policing. Certain communities in the UK, the African Caribbean community, for example, have many examples where they have been physically brutalized, and they are regularly, they are disproportionately subjected to stop and search procedures, which often lead to violence, etc. If we look at police shootings, if you look at the proportion of people of colour in the UK in shootings, they are disproportionately shot by police officers. So yes, violence is a problem within policing here in the UK as it is in the USA.
Any more questions? So I would like to thank you for enlightening us on the topic and giving us a comparative study about the policing in UK and in India. And it was great having you, sir.
It was my pleasure and honour. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir.
And now the sun has come out as well behind. So you have brought the sun to me. So thank you. Have a good day, the rest of you. And as I said before, if you have any specific questions, and certainly when it comes to your dissertations or assignments with regard to criminal justice, policing, that sort of thing, I am more than happy to give my thoughts or signpost you to other reading you can actually access. But thank you.
Thank you, sir. Have a good day.
Thank you. Goodbye.